Hello, NightHaunt. I'm painting this NightHaunt with a lot more colors than I normally have going on. And the reason why is I haven't looked at the rules yet, but this guy appears to be a lot more magical, more of a spellcaster, I'm assuming, than the other NightHaunt, or at least that'll be the aesthetic even if it doesn't materialize in the game. I'm looking forward to getting all these NightHaunt painted because then I can actually start playing the game. Because I'll have everything painted after 4 years. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm going to use a combination of US Art Supply airbrush colors and AK Interactive metallics. And also I'm going to use Green Stuff World fluorescent yellow. So I'm going to start with white. And this wet palette I'm going to use for my daughter. She's almost 2 years old. So we get messy with a lot of paint, and that one's going to be reserved for her. And then I've moved everything now to this War Paints Fanatic wet palette. And this thing is just awesome. So let me explain how I further modified it for my use. I want to get rid of this green paint here real quick so it doesn't get on my models. Not sure where that came from, but let's get rid of it now before it caused me trouble. I'm sorry I didn't have to get up. I actually keep some paper towel now in my wet palette because there's a nice little handy container for brushes. I normally keep my really crappy brushes in it so that I can use them to mix paint. But I also have a compartment where I can store some paper towel so I can do cleanups, or I can remove paint from a model that whoopses. Besides using a dry brush for it. Normally I keep some more flexible brushes in here for this purpose. So here I have created this little diagram, and I'm going to try to keep this cover clean as opposed to what I did with this one where I used it for a lot of speed paint and stuff like that. I'm going to keep this clean so that I have this pattern, and it's real obvious the way I wrote it, which way is up and which way is down. And then that corresponds, so it's ultra matte, satin, and gloss. And that corresponds to these little mixing cups that I created I ordered some 2-part acrylic, 2-part epoxy, I guess it is, from eBay. It was twice as cheap as Amazon, but it took, of course, longer to come. But it was 2 gallons, a gallon of hardener and a gallon of resin for $60. Twice as cheap as the Amazon stuff, but you have to wait a little bit longer. And with it came these little silicone cups for mixing paint in with the resin so that you can mold things out in different colors. My level of doing hasn't achieved that yet, but that's possible with that. So I cut down these cups, and I had cut them down so far for the old wet palette, which you may have seen if you watch some of my old videos, and I've cut them down more for this new wet palette. And the way it works now and the way it worked before is when this comes down on it, it actually seals it and keeps it kind of more wet. And I wish there was, this thing was made more out of silicone than this hard plastic. It would be easier to get the paint out of, and it would also kind of seal to the top and keep stuff wet in here, even though it's a dry palette. So that's a modification that Army Painter could make. The additional thing is if I order more of this two-part epoxy, these little cups actually fit nicely into there, and I would actually leave them a little bit taller so that they would seal up against the top when I put it down, and keep the liquids in there not only hydrated but also from spilling into the other compartments, which is a problem with this thing as well because the way it's designed. The cover doesn't, well I could put a sheet of silicone on the top of this too and then put the cover down and have it seal in there. That would probably be a really good plan if I could get silicone in sheets. That would probably be a really good plan for keeping this more moist. And I'll certainly, I just thought of it now, but I'll certainly work on that in the future. Probably be a real good addition to my painting plan. So what I keep in here, ultra, matte, satin, and gloss. And I do it in that sequence so it's easy for me to remember without even looking at the chart. Is I keep Liquitex medium in there, and the different media can give me different effects, like things that are metallic are more shiny, things that are cloth are more matte, things that are organic are more satin, and that kind of effect to my painting. Just trying to expand it. I basically got one army painted now, so I don't have a huge amount of experience, so anything I could be doing better, I would appreciate it. All right, let's start with white. This stuff is real thin because it's meant to be sprayed out of an airbrush, just the way it is. I never actually used it for that. I'm more of a primer guy with my airbrush and an iridescent guy. So I haven't done a lot of painting with airbrush paint, and probably the reason for that in a lot of ways is because I'm still using a single action airbrush. I haven't moved to a dual action yet, where I can get the fine control and use the lesser pressure to allow me to be more accurate and actually paint with it. So I'm using this for other purposes. So I can probably pretty much use it straight up. I did put a little bit of water from the wet palette and a little bit of thinner on the brush, just so that the paint comes off the brush, because if you use it dry, apparently it won't come off the brush very easily. So first thing I'm going to paint is his arms and hands. And it'll kind of soak into the primer, so I'm putting it on there pretty thick. And I'm holding the model kind of horizontal so that while it's still liquid, it doesn't run down onto the staff, right? I'm allowing it to be pretty horizontal. And I put my wrist together because I'm very shaky. So I can steady myself. And then in addition to the arms, I'm also going to paint inside the lantern with white. And the reason that I want to do that is so that it has more of an effect on the fluorescent paint that I'm going to use. So this will actually light up under black light or UV, but be careful if you use that. It will put a suntan on the retina of your eyes. And then I'm also kind of highlighting this. So instead of making this black like evilness, I'm having this be more magical ability, and what I'm highlighting white is so that the fluorescent paint really pops there. So I'm just doing the high edges of it. Keeping it horizontal even though it's on the bottom. That way, if it does drip, it'll drip onto my wet palette rather than down onto the staff or whatever, right? I'm steadying my hand on the table. So I'm just doing with the white the things I really want to pop with the fluorescent. Once it dries a little bit, I'll stand it upright and I will get the very top of this magical stuff that's coming off of it. Pretty thin, and the white and the primer soaks up the paint a lot. All right, that looks pretty dry. So I am going to just get the top edge of this. I might get a little thinner and a little paint. Just highlighting it so that those places will be more fluorescent. All right, his helm covers his whole face. Yep, he doesn't even really have a face or a skull, it's just the helm, and it's kind of empty inside. Okay, and that probably concludes the white, at least for now. So white is done, and then we're gonna go with, I don't think I'm gonna use the brown. I was gonna use that for the staff, but the staff looks more metallic to me, and I'm using this AK Interactive paint, so I have 3 different colors of metallic. And I tried to pick out the ones that were as distinct as possible. All right, the next thing that I'm gonna paint is, I'm just gonna do the top here, the shoulders with some contrast paint. Of course, maybe it would look better if I did this part down here. Yeah, I think I'll do this part down here. That way I can leave the top the way it is and it'll be kind of naturally highlighted with the white spray paint. So I did a zenithal on this thing, airbrush Vallejo surface primer, black, and then I did 45 degrees from the bottom, apple green, Rust-Oleum, and from the top I did white Citadel spray paint. So 3 different paints to get the color that I wanted. I'm real happy with the way the I haven't mentioned this yet, but I'm real happy with the way that the apple green looked. I thought it would be a really lousy color, but spraying it over black, very thin, it actually turned into a really nice color green for these guys. I like it much better than the green that is on these hex raids. I like that kind of desaturated, dirty green. I think it looks a lot more old, although maybe the green of the hex rays looks more ethereal. Okay, I'm gonna get a little water and I'm just gonna kind of spread this paint out. It looks like it's a little thick right there. Kind of a whoops that's easy to fix while it's still wet. All right, so let's go with the green, and I am going to mix the green in the dry palette portion of the Army Painter wet palette combo. And I'm gonna put some of this green. And I mixed this with different colors of Arteco. I think I probably put some black and green. Is probably what I did with it. And I could actually lighten it up by adding a little white, but I do want each model to look a little bit distinctive, so I'll probably not do that. But I would probably especially want to do that if I were just painting the top of it. All right, so I want a real dark green to be on the far left. So put in a couple drops of that green, and then I'll use these really crappy brushes to get my contrast medium that I made with a lot of water. And just a drop or so of matte medium. And what I'm looking for is it to be pretty transparent when I put it up at the top. And because it's already thin, I feel like it's the right transparency with just 2 brushfuls of the contrast medium that I made myself. And I'm not going to do the very bottom, because if you've watched my videos before, I do that black to represent evilness. And normally I start at the bottom, but I think I'm going to do it the opposite. I think I'm going to do the top. And then go down, because I want the contrast paint to kind of stain on the bottom, or the speed paint, if you will, to kind of pull on the bottom, not on the top. That looks pretty good. And again, just like the last model, I forgot to make a stain first and make that darker. But theoretically, the contrast paint should do that on its own, right? Although in the speed paint instructions, they do recommend that you put down a wash first. always try to remember I'm going to be viewing this model from the top. So it's good to look at the top. But I think that's a real nice contrast paint made with that cheap US Art Supply airbrush paint. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the color. I think it goes nicely with the other ones. It's not the darkest green I have. Probably because it's been thinned so much. All right. Then I have my black. I think I'll paint the black last. So I'm gonna move that. And I think I'll actually paint my fluorescent now. Now I don't have a paper clip. It's good to have a paper clip in here. This paint has a tendency to get clogged. But it looks like there's actually some coming out. So I must have used it relatively recently. This is probably the fluorescent color I use the most. Is this yellow? Got a little bit on the edge of the lantern, but I'll cover that with metallic. But my experience has been, even when it's painted over, it still fluoresces. Look at how that pops when it's painted over white, right? I'm just painting the highlight areas. Or trying to, at least. Try not to get his helm. The more careful I am, the more just this area will fluoresce and not the whole thing. Be a good time to actually remove what's on the lantern, if I can, because then it won't fluoresce. Did I get some on his shoulder? No, that's just the color of the contrast paint. Good. Okay. It's kind of a greenish yellow. Okay, I'm going to clean that brush real well. Then I'm going to touch up the white a little bit on his hand. Yep, and I got some on the staff. And a little is a lot with fluorescent paint, so I really don't need to do much more than that, other than, although it might look actually kind of awesome to have it kind of part black too. Paint the under part of it black. No, I'm not going to try something that complex. I don't think, not today. Because I bought the Tempest to Souls and I bought the Soul Wars set back when they were cheap. I got another shot at least the lower level guys. I got another shot on doing them again to try to do better. So basically, I'm pretty happy with the first models that I've really painted. All right, let's go with gold. Now let's go with silver first. Go from lightest to darkest, I think. This is a silver color rather than a darker paint that you normally have for this color. It's got more options, so it's probably meant to highlight more. Use a deeper color silver and then it's meant to highlight, but I'm using it for this. I want him to pop a little bit more and his weapons to pop a little bit more since he's a leader guy. I feel like he's going to get more action than the other guys. I'll want to come back and give that another coat because I can see the green through. Not that that's really too bad of a thing. That could be okay. It's flowing really nice. I really like this paint. It's covering really nice and flowing really nice. Thank you, AK. This is awesome paint. Paint some of this silver, but I'm gonna leave that little curly Q thing that looks like wrought iron to me to paint black. Myself steady, I'm shaking a lot. Oh, and I was gonna use a painting handle. I'm starting to make myself painting handles. That's much better. And I'm using medicine bottles and sticky tack, or whatever that stuff is called that you put posters up on the walls with. And I don't believe I bent that one. I believe it's supposed to be bent. Unless it got bent on the sprue. But in the picture, when I was assembling, it looked kind of bent too, so I'm thinking not. It's a lot darker here, the prime. So it's not covering as nicely as it was with the sword. But probably the darker the color, like if it's dark like lead belchers, would probably work more easily. But I'll put on 2 coats, I'll put on 3 coats, whatever I have to do to be satisfied with it. So I got a little bit on the wrought iron work. Which is not surprising because I'm shaking like a leaf on a tree, right? All right, let's put another coat on his sword. I'm not doing a very good job. At least that's the inside of the sword where it's not going to be as apparent. Yeah, that looks pretty good on the third coat. And I think I'll only need 2 coats on the sword, unless the primer soaks it in a lot. Yeah, that paint is starting to build up real nicely. Okay, the front edge. Back edge if I can. Hopefully I'm working on camera. All right. And then I want to paint his helm. Look at it from the top, it looks pretty good. And I'm going to call those things that are hanging down cloth, so I'm going to leave those green. The idea is to leave as much. So, okay, I'm actually, the bottom edge of this sword, I'm going to actually go with the third coat on it. It'll probably cover pretty good with black. All right. I'm going to call that pretty good for now. And sometimes I see stuff that I don't see when I'm taking the final picture for my thumbnail, if I make one. Sometimes I see stuff that I didn't see and I go back and touch it up, I'm not gonna lie. Because I just didn't see that one. I was doing it. All right, the next metallic color I'm gonna use is Old Gold, and it looks like there's like a verdigris effect going on in there. But I've seen weird stuff with the plastic like that. Well, it seems to be going away on the fluorescent paint as well. gold, I just want to do the lantern on the edge of the lantern. Big advantage of a painting handle, you can set it down. Steady yourself better. Because when you're holding it, it is shaking, and you're painting it is shaking, you're more likely to mess up, right? The darker color definitely seems to cover better than the silver. If I show a little bit of green, it'll just look like verdigris, right? I haven't tried it yet, but I have a verdigris effect from Army Painters. War Paints Fanatics. But I want to kind of stick to one paint. And that way, if you try to copy my method, I'm not so arrogant to think that anybody would really want to. But if you do, then you only have to buy one kind of paint to do it, right? And maybe some media to make the wash. All right, now I'm going to switch to the copper. And I'll do the handle on his sword, and I'll do the staff on the lantern. Nice paint, AK. I don't think I own some other AK products like Snow and Ice, but I don't think I really own other paints by AK. It may be wrong, but I don't think I do. And I bought the metallics because they're kind of famous. I think that's a real nice contrast between that copper paint and that gold. good to count the number of sides that you've painted. So I come up with 4 now. Looks pretty right. Very shaky. So of course I picked a day at my shakiness to do this model with a lot of different colors on it, right? I normally try to paint with much less colors than this. Mixed my thinner 50% with water. It's US Art Supply thinner. Cheap and satisfying from Amazon. Okay, and now I'm just going to paint the bottom of it. I wish I had my phone right now and I'd shine a little bit more light on it. Roll it around and then look at it from the top. And then I'm going to paint the hilt of his sword. And I know I'm spending a lot of time painting this model and using all the colors, much more, but I feel like this is kind of a leader guy. So he deserves a little more. Look at it from the top. Oh, I see some silver where probably didn't miss, but it just didn't really cover. And I got some on his hands. I accidentally painted his hands. Let's go back to silver first, because I'm got metallic on my brush. Actually, the front of the sword looks really good. There's a tiny little spot where I got some copper on it. But other than that, looks pretty good. I can do this and I'm this shaky, you can certainly do it. All right, finally we got black. Put a mixing ball in this one, apparently. It's good. Some thinner on my brush. 50% thinner, 50% water. Pretty good paint. Try to do the cast iron on this fence without getting it on the silver. paint the bottom of this fence. All right, where was my black? Over here. And I'll do the evilness coming up from the bottom. Get a little more thinner. And I may regret doing this evilness black, but once it was iridescent painted, I didn't regret it on my chain rasp. So hopefully I won't regret it on these guys, especially my banshees. I'm hoping that the iridescent paint will give it kind of a purplish glow to it, or shine to it, sheen to it. Yeah, I'm not hating that. Come in. Okay, I'm gonna stop the video now because my granddaughter's here. And she's probably gonna wanna paint, so thank you, NightHaunts.